Hi there and welcome to MiWeek. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Christy McDonald. It is the start of the second year in office for Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan, and he changed things up a little bit with his second State of the City address on Tuesday night. Instead of gathering in his city building downtown, the mayor delivered his speech in the heart of a Detroit neighborhood at the old Redford Theater on Lasser Road. Flanked by the city council, Duggan painted a positive picture of Detroit's future. So coming up, we're going to take a look at how far the city has progressed and talk about the mayor's plans to grow the population. Plus, Governor Snyder presents his state budget for the next fiscal year. We'll look at where he wants to increase spending and which areas he wants to cut. And the investigation into corruption in Wayne County has officially come to an end. What does that mean for Robert Ficano? It is all coming up for you on MiWeek. But we do start with Detroit and Mayor Mike Duggan's State of the City address. With the city fresh out of bankruptcy and firmly in his control, the mayor talked about programs and initiatives focused on neighborhoods, from transit to foreclosure concerns, property assessments, and parks. It is all focused on making the city a better place to live.
Detroit is now on the road to recovery.
Passionate and direct, Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan focused on neighborhoods and city services during his second State of the City address on Tuesday night. The enthusiastic crowd at the Redford Theater cheered at the prospect of a balanced budget for the first time since 2002, neighborhood lighting ahead of schedule, and a fleet of new buses rolling out.
80 brand new buses. The first 11 just arrived. They're going on the street this week. We'll be adding 10 a week from now through August, and by the middle of this year, for the first time in nearly 20 years in the city, we are going to show up according to the published schedule.
These steps are toward Duggan's ultimate goal of growing the population of the city. He touted the city's land bank and its role in rehabbing neighborhoods, moving in families, and making sure longtime residents who have stuck it out in the city continue to stay.
Yesterday, with the agreement of HUD and a group of foundations, we have a new $8 million loan pool that will be available at 0% interest to make loans to Detroiters to fix up their homes.
The mayor focused on public safety, a high priority in the city's success. Emergency response times are down from 18 to 11 minutes. Crime is a concern, but homicide rates, while still high, are down. Duggan credits officers who are building relationships with the community.
We're going to put 200 more police officers on the street and get them in the cars and responding. We're also doing it with agreements with the Detroit Police Officers Association to take police officers out of jobs behind desks where they were dispatching cars or watching the fleet or doing payroll and putting them onto the street.
The mayor announced some new initiatives, an app called Improve Detroit, where residents can log complaints about lighting or other services. Also, Motor City Match, $500,000 awarded quarterly for the next 5 years to entrepreneurs in the city. And Duggan isn't giving up on tackling the problem of inflated car insurance.
It is unbelievable. Detroiters are paying twice as much as suburbanites. And we're going to have a plan in the first half of this year that's going to be actuarially sound. And when we have it, I can promise you I am going to fight every single day until we finally fix this injustice and give people in this town a fair rate for their cars. And the mayor used the phrase economic inclusion to make sure Detroiters can succeed with job training and affordable housing. Things you didn't hear in those speeches, any plans for getting involved with education or touting downtown achievements. There is a lot to get to, so let's get started with our MiWeek contributors Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson from the Detroit Free Press. Gentlemen, it's good to see you.
It's good to be here.
Happy MiWeek Thursday. Obviously something is missing here at this table.
I don't know what you're talking about, Christy.
We have to let you in on the joke a little bit. We're making fun of Stephen just a little bit because he forgot his jacket.
Well, it's not that I forgot the jacket. I just thought I was coming to a radio show and not television. So.
All of a sudden you're starting to confuse the various media jobs that you're doing. So in solidarity, Nolan had an idea. Because Nolan hatches interesting ideas from time to time.
That's right. We just all kind of do it in our shirt sleeves this week.
So we all have to take our over jackets off?
Now, if he comes in his pajamas next week.
We're not wearing pajama pants?
That's
Is
not
that
gonna
it?
really work.
Is that it? Do you feel more comfortable now?
This is how I am in the office. This is how I write my columns. This is how I edit the paper.
So this is
It's the appropriate attire.
This is Stephen Unplugged now, or we just...
It's just Stephen at work.
All right. Well, let's get to work a little bit here, and let's talk about the State of the City address. Nolan, I'm going to start with you. What did you hear that you liked from Mike Duggan this week.
There seemed to be two focuses to the speech, and I thought the location of the speech was very significant, very symbolic, having it out in the neighborhoods for the first time, out in the Redford Theater. The focus was all on neighborhoods. He hardly mentioned the things that are happening downtown. I mean, the message was clear that downtown's got momentum. It's going to take care of itself. We really need to get a handle on these neighborhoods. And then he also talked about making sure Detroiters participate in this comeback by getting them ready to take the jobs that are coming to Detroit. I mean, there's no point bringing thousands of jobs to Detroit if Detroiters aren't ready to take them, if we're having to bring in workers from elsewhere to take these jobs. We need to get the people who live here ready to participate in this recovery.
This wasn't a flowery speech, Stephen. It was passionate. It was pretty straightforward. If you live in a neighborhood in Detroit, are you happy? Are you pleased? Was what Mike Duggan said on Tuesday night enough for you to say, you know what, I'm going to recommit to this city?
No, I don't think it's enough to say you're going to stay, for instance. I mean, you still have an awful lot of people living in neighborhoods, I think, who are just on the brink, who are 1 or 2 paychecks away from saying, you know what, I've got enough money now to move to Warren or East Point or some other suburb. I do think you wanted to hear the mayor talk about your neighborhood, though, and he did. He talked about very concrete, specific things that he's going to do to try to make neighborhoods better. He concentrated a lot on blight, explained how the blight thing is going. He talked about the worker training. He talked about lots of different things that should affect the neighborhoods. The problem is, of course, he can't claim victory on any of them yet, and all of the things that he's tried have hit the sort of familiar snags that we have in Detroit. I think the difference is this is a much more tenacious mayor who's much more focused on the specifics of outcomes and results, and he's trying to, solve the problems that come up.
But he may not be able to declare victory for a long time to come. These are really tough problems to solve, and they're going to take, progress is going to be very incremental, and it's going to take a long time. I think his mission was to convince people that we're headed in the right direction. So if somebody is sitting on the bubble there, do I stay or do I go? He's got to make them believe that things are going to get better.
Yeah, it's not like we're going to sit here and we're going to study, or we know the problem is grave and we're going to slowly move in. It feels like that he's saying, well, look, we're just going to start to do this, and we may not have the results or the numbers right now, but there is a forward momentum here. I liked how he talked about transportation and the buses. We're going to get the buses on time for the first time in 20 years, which is amazing.
A low bar.
When you think, it's a low bar, that's what should be happening already.
To do it, and that's a pretty bold promise given the history of this bus system, that we're going to service every route and service it on time by midsummer. That'll make a difference. It'll make a difference for people trying to get to work. It'll also make a difference for school children who face just unconscionable rides to get to school. But he also mentioned that he's going to hopefully open up, let SMART start coming back in, so we get a more integrated bus system, something I think we talked about last week that is a real hindrance to this area.
What about that app that now people can interact with City Hall a little bit easier and get their complaints, and then an email system is going to make sure that it gets to the powers that be and gets back to you? Does that move the needle for people in terms of saying, you know what, the city's finally listening to me, or I can get somewhere with the city?
Well, I think it does. Other cities have had these kinds of apps for years, and I think more than anything, they do make people feel like somebody is there, right? If something's wrong, there's somebody I can contact directly. Of course, the fear is of overpromising, right? If I send a note that my streetlight is out, how quickly is somebody really going to be able to respond and get it back on? And if they don't, then do I feel like, well, the app doesn't work, or this was all sort of a scam? You also have the question in the city of internet access, right? It's not ubiquitous the way it is in other communities. That's starting to change with cell phones, and I assume that you'll be able to use your internet access through that. But it's not a big picture solution, but it's one of those little bitty things that you do that make people feel better about government response.
Here's what he's up against. A report out earlier this week, housing values all over Metro Detroit were up and up significantly, still down 10% in the city. That tells you there's still more housing stock than there is demand for it, and people are still, even more people going out than coming in. That's what he's got to turn around.
Yeah,
And he's talking about the tax assessments as well on properties, and also he touched on the large issue, the huge problem of foreclosures that we're now seeing that's going to be happening this year.
Well, I mean, it happens every year right now. Wayne County, which collects the taxes on behalf of the city of Detroit, when you get too far behind, they come and they take the house. The numbers every year are growing, tens of thousands of houses that they're ready to take over. And of course, this is driving down property values. It's driving people out of the city. It feeds into all the problems that he has. One number that I didn't hear the mayor talk about the other night, but that he's talked about before, is the low number of mortgages that get written in the city of Detroit, so that which helps put in perspective some of the euphoria we have about people moving back and people selling houses. These are cash sales for the most part. There's only 375 mortgages written in the whole city in 2014. The foreclosure.
That's an interesting number.
Yeah, I mean, you have 3,200 sales, 375 mortgages. The foreclosure problem is feeding that difficulty with values, which is preventing people from being able to get mortgages.
These are primarily now tax foreclosures, and as he rationalizes the tax assessments, I think that number is going to slow down. But in the meantime, the mayor and the county have to work together, have to be very aggressive about figuring out how to keep these people in their homes. Repayment plans, reductions of unreasonable tax bills. Figure out a way. The last thing you want to do is throw more residents out of the city who want to stay. They got to figure out a way to work out that debt and keep people in their houses.
Yeah, and the state legislature did help a little bit with lessening the penalty, and the mayor did reference the fact that it's about 6,500 families had already worked out some kind of payment plan with Wayne County.
But the sticking point there is, do they stick to the plan? Are they able to
stay
stick to that plan? We do get a lot of people into those plans, and then it falls apart, and then they end up back on the list.
Okay, so as we kind of wrap up this discussion, I wanted to touch upon public safety, because the mayor did talk about that, about the relationship he has with James Craig, the fact that community policing has made a difference in these neighborhoods, the fact that the numbers are still high but slowly coming down. Is there a perception in the city that the city is safer, Nolan?
I don't know what the perception is. I think they've done a lot of things to create that perception, but public safety is still the major obstacle, along with schools. He talked a little about schools, but he reaffirmed that he doesn't want that thing on his plate. Public safety is on his plate. Still 300 murders last year in the city. That's way too many for a city this size. I mean, any number is too many, but that's just outrageous. And still too many children being shot. Too many little kids getting killed in the city. It remains the most dangerous city in America for children. He did talk about a prenatal plan, which is very important, because prematurity and infant problems are higher here than they are anywhere in the country, and it's something we've got to take seriously.
Last word.
Yeah, I mean, this is again about getting middle-class families back into the city. That is one of the things that lowers crime. When neighborhoods are stable and expectations are high, the criminals don't commit the crimes that they're used to getting away with right now, and so it all feeds into the same issues.
It all feeds in the same issues, but I'm going to also argue that those middle-class families are not going to come back in if you don't have a stable, if you feel safe and they have a stable education system that they can count on as well. And that is going to be the next big story here as we continue to talk about Detroit.